other questions for Sean? Thank you.
Thanks for coming down.
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
I think we got about 20 classic war stories out of the last time we went in.
Yeah.
The trail's a little rough.
Yeah,
Once in a while, you're wondering if you're gonna be at the bottom of the canyon and stuff.
Looking off the side.
We had some good adventures at that time. Things were a little stressful with EBID, and
Were they with you?
on the third
Yeah,
day,
we just
on
enjoyed.
the third day, we got to stay at some cabins, and the sleeping arrangements. And Al was a little nervous because I was assigned to sleep in the same cabin with the EBID guys.
Uh-oh.
And he says, I don't know, you better sleep with one eye open. But no, they were great and enjoyed ourselves.
Yeah, that's the sad part about the water wars. Actually, on a personal basis, you can get there, all good guys too. Just, the water's different.
I got to visit a lot with our good friend, may rest in peace, Robert Fabian, on that trip. And so I liked the way they traveled. They had a big ice chest in the back of our Suburban.
Oh, yeah. If there's a salad pack anywhere in Bush, I know how they travel.
And there was.
Yeah, I guarantee it.
But it's a neat trip, and you know, I wanted Pete to go, but unfortunately he's swamped with stuff. So
He's probably deer hunting.
maybe next time.
Yeah, we're about, Omar's gonna explain here in a second why he's so swamped.
All right, let's see here. Chuy, you're still up.
Okay. That item A, you know, as instructed by the board of directors, we had a choice of trying to get some Texas Water Development Board funding through loans, but you all said no, concentrate on the grants. This is a grant that Omar's been, and Omar's going to give you a presentation here on our other grants, but this is a grant to continue lining the Riverside Canal as we have planned. Eventually, hopefully, we'll finish between Wasteway 1 and Wasteway 2.
Wow.
That'll be a huge accomplishment for
Which one? Riverside?
the Riverside. Is from the Rio Bosque. It hugs along the border fence all the way into Tornillo.
Isn't that already concrete?
No.
The upper part of it.
Part of it up to Wasteway 1, but we want to go from Wasteway 1 to Wasteway 2.
Which is how far?
It's 7.5 miles. So-
Gary said we need to learn these terms.
So we, this is a $1 million grant application that we'd like to submit for 2020. It's USBR funds, Bureau Reclamation funds.
I don't think, a million, I haven't looked at the grant.
Water Smart.
For 7 miles?
That's a lot more than, that's closer to 7 million, or even more.
Yeah,
But
this will cover, how much was it, Omar?
6,600 feet.
6,600 feet?
So a little more than a mile. 1.2, something like
1.25.
We'll have to take you on a ride, George.
Yeah.
I know we've been promising that.
So this is for 1 mile, if there's 7, you can get another grant for each.
Right,
one.
we can, we've got other plans as we go along.
as Larry knows, it's got another name, the Riverside is called Old Sandy.
No, Sandy.
Yeah.
It is,
But it'll,
it's a
you know,
sandy.
we have a lot of water loss there through seepage and have a lot of sand accumulation, and we've got the border fence on one side, and you know, Border Patrol's supposed to maintain that south side of the bank, and it's never happened. With this, when we do this, it'll begin to be a maintenance-free canal almost. I said almost.
It'll change the type of maintenance.
So anyway, I'm asking for board's permission and approval to let me
Alright.
submit this grant
You
application.
got the resolution under tab A,
Mhm.
and I don't see anything, so I'll entertain a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved. Second.
Larry moves, George seconds, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Okay, Julie, you got that one.
Okay. Item B, we were awarded a grant by the Bureau of Reclamation to concrete line the Montoya Main, George.
I don't know.
about it before when we asked for your all's permission to apply for this grant. We were awarded the grant along with the item C. We were awarded the grant to purchase 50 well meters. It's meters that we need to update on all our wells, and possibly Al's going to work on the possibility of getting the meters that we can add telemetry to them. We can.
How many wells do we got right now?
We have 62.
60.
60. So we've been awarded those two grants, which is great. It'll just add, and you'll see the presentation by Omar here in a little bit. Item D and E, we'd like to move that to the bottom. Al's going to do a little presentation on that, and then if you all approve of removing that to the bottom of the list. Sure. Omar's going to give his little PowerPoint presentation on what we worked on, since he came on board, the grants that we've been successful in obtaining, both from the USBR and from Texas Water Development Board, and what we're working on also. So, he said that I'll pass it on.
We can't find the mouse, but just tell me to advance.
Okay. Well, good morning. As Mr. Reyes mentioned, we are going to cover grants that we've received since 2008. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have as we are going through these slides. So what you see right now is a summary of projects that we have again engaged since 2018. We have been awarded 13 different projects. You can please review the list. Most of those are from reclamation, but we do have some state funding from the Texas Water Development Board and TxDOT.
Next slide. It's pretty. You want me to stay on that slide for a while?
You can see the amounts. It's, we've been very successful.
He's got a summation after that.
Yeah, on line 8, you see that, George? Line 8?
Yep.
Yeah. This is a continuation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about.
And the one that Ms. Reyes just talked about is not on this list. It's
No,
a new one.
it's a
We're
new
just
one.
submitting it. We don't know if we're going
Right,
to
we're
receive it.
Al, and all these concrete lining, have you seen a big difference in performance of?
That's probably a bigger question for Pete and Robert. I think my biggest worry on it, and probably Pete's too, is that some of these we can't keep sediment free, so they're going to be potentially more tricky to clean, right, Pete?
Right.
And the other big concern we have is what's called standard operating procedures, which we're getting so much of it in now, we're going to have to really institute a program, almost training. So we had a catastrophic, we had a interesting flood situation. Robert's not here, but due to the interstate construction, even though we had numerous assurances to me and Jay and other people that they'd actually make the stormwater less severe on us. In other words, they're putting in detention ponds. They increased the impervious area so much that this year we had an event that came into the American Canal that was a fairly large magnitude, short duration from a thunderstorm. And it made it through the whole system, and I guess they started evacuating the system. The problem is if you have, these canals reduce the seepage, but they don't stop the seepage. They're not designed to stop the seepage. In fact, specifically designed not to in some regards. So that means that if the canal has been pressurized for a long time, then there'll probably be a little water built around it. If the area has a low groundwater table, it'll probably drain out, won't be an issue. But if it's an area that has, and we run into this before, little pockets like the Montoya, the Maine is one that we're worried about. Yeah, and you take the water out of the canal, now you've just changed the equilibrium of the canal. And as you guys know, on the Mississippi and every place else in the world, they build barges out of concrete.
Right.
Concrete is not maybe heavier than water, but it's the amount of air that you have.
Wow.
And beneath the concrete that makes it buoyant. And so in this case, you think of our canal as a barge, and if the groundwater is high on the outside of the canal, we remove the water from the inside of the canal. The barge is flooded with water, it's not an issue, but when you de-water quickly, then those will pop. And I've witnessed those, even reinforced steel ones, I've witnessed that happen, where they literally pop.
And you're worried about it on our system for what kind of a
Well,
length?
I'm just saying it's a very site-specific, event-specific problem. It's well-known within reclamation's got reports on it, we've had millions of dollars of canals throughout this west that have had this problem and caused a lot of damage. So we have to be a little bit more careful. It's not an issue if you dewater slowly, if you drain the canal down slowly. It becomes an issue typically in an emergency in an area that has high water. And typically that high water is gonna be about this time of year, right? Judy and everybody, and Robert and Pete knows that this is when we've been irrigating for months and everything.
Around Donovan there, around that old Donovan.
All that area has a problem. It is a non-issue as long as you keep water in the canal. So it doesn't matter where you are in the system, the problem goes away if you don't drain the canal out. It's when you drain the canal out rapidly that this thing happens, and it happens, it's not forgiving. It's not gonna happen a little bit. And the only solution to it is when we've seen it happen, I can show pictures of it. We haven't had it happen here, right? I think we had something that might have been that over at the settling basin, remember that?
Yeah, a little bit of buckle, but I mean, nothing that really,
Pop,
yeah, popped out.
We've been able to handle it, but for example, the boundary was worried about it, that they put in these drainage systems behind the back of the canal in the New American Canal. They're worried that that's a problem area. Riverside's always been a problem area next to the border drain, but the border drain keeps if we keep the drain. The other issue is it's a very complicated problem. It's correlated to the way our drains work too. So my point is, we didn't have that much line concrete, and a lot of it was laterals, which were up high, non-issue, but now that we're doing some of the lower canals, we've really got to get with Pete. And then Pete's problem is that once we get concrete in the bottom, it's a little hard to dig out, right? Got to be pretty careful.
But we haven't had a lot of sediment settle in the concrete areas. It's mostly when it leaves the concrete areas.
Right, we designed it that way, but, okay, that's another thing that folds in, we're getting to with this many projects, is I can only push the sediment so far. I mean, the concrete doesn't make the sand go away, it just moves it to another location. And as we know in some of the sites, like on the Franklin Canal, the sand backs up so much that it backs up into our concrete area. So we've really got to tackle the sediment removal issue. So if we lined the Riverside Canal for 7 miles, that was a primary sediment removal area. And now he can't remove the sediment as easily. We can move it through that system with water, but when it gets down to a hole in the wall, it's gonna be much worse. It's moving all that sediment that used to accumulate in there on a year-by-year basis, and then he'd clean out as needed. It's depositing it all now at hole in the wall. So that means that we've got to have a regular sediment removal program in the hole in the wall area to keep on top of it. Because the sediment, your guys' land is over since 1920 has gone up an average of 7 or 8 inches. I don't know if you didn't know this, but
Yeah.
most of the sediment goes on your guys' land. That's where we put it. We don't have much choice, right? So that seems like, hey, that 7 inches is a lot, because then that's one reason why, like for the Clint, we have to run that water 7 inches higher than initially we ran it. It makes sense if you start thinking about all the changes that have happened over here. Sorry, I got off subject. Just be aware that, a chance now, that these grants are great, and they make a significant improvement to the district, but they bring with it a set of problems. The hydrostatic pressures, we gotta be real careful about that. None of us wanna be in the newspaper for a canal popping. And then the sediment, we've gotta address that with a new program, an annual sediment removal program. The good and the bad. This is a good one. Sorry, no more.
There's some little farms around hole in the wall there. Talk about farmer today.
Plus that sediment's good for
It's real good. Good
pecan
rich
farmers because they mixed it,
There you go.
mix it up with the clay, and so there's some good to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we do need donations, people that are willing to take. Okay, I can't use that word, I'm sorry. They wanna.
All right.
All right, and we're gonna go over each of these projects very briefly. Again, any questions, happy to answer them. Could you please switch? So in total, we've been awarded $4,400,000. The total projects are $8,638,105. Most of this is delivered to in kind, so equipment costs and labor costs. Again, the grant, I'm sorry, the resolution you just approved is for this upcoming 2020 fiscal year, and that is a $1 million request, and the total project would be a little bit over $2 million. Okay, switch. And so the first, so the way it's gonna work is we're gonna give you some details, and then you're gonna see some pictures after on the project. So the first project is the Franklin Canal heading at the border highway. This was funded by TxDOT, in addition to lining 3,220 feet. There was also box culverts underneath the highway. Funding amount was $2 million, total project cost was $2.4 million, and the project was completed in 2018. And so this is more or less what it looks like. And here you can see some definitions. Moving on, there was another project with TxDOT at Texas 20. This is Alameda. We concrete lined at 3,220 feet. The project total cost was $600,000, of which TxDOT paid at $200,000. That was the material cost, and this was completed in 2019.
Oops, sorry.
And so this is what it looks like pretty much.
More pictures. So yeah, that was a super critical area right there for pedestrians.
And the lining of the Franklin Canal continued past 375, and there you can appreciate the steel panel reinforcement technique that Pete uses to extend the longevity of the concrete. And so this project was funded by the Texas Water Development Board. This is a design project, and this was the 8 miles that Mr. Reyes talked about earlier. We were able to, the Texas Water Development Board paid half of it, and we should be able to complete it this year. And you can see a map of where that coverage area is. And it's pretty much just along the US-Mexico border wall.
So we had that, so you might remember seeing a bunch of survey bills that were in the $500 report. Those were all.
Okay.
And then you will see some engineering bills, but at least the good news is 50% of it is covered by water development.
Also funded by the Water Development Board was a telemetry project. They cost shared with us $50,000 for to purchase telemetry equipment. The district provided another $25,000 in cash, and then the rest was labor to pay for the installation of the project. And this should be completed also this year. You can see some of the installations that Rick and his team have completed there.
So we've got a total of 102 telemetry sites now, starting from Caballo Dam all the way into Hudspeth County.
Yeah, we're just heads up on the telemetry of these. So this is the infrastructure that you see here. That metal box has the electronics in it. We're getting obsolete on our, when did we first start this? It was 2004, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think
Well, remember, at first, like down at my house, y'all had to run electric lines, and now you're doing it all solar, right?
Yeah, everything's solar.
So you don't have to run the electric poles. and
Yeah,
all
well, our first energy started in '91, and technology's changed so much. We were using old Motorola radios that was right, so we need the electric line. Remember, we used like the same radios you had in the truck.
Yeah.
And now they've changed, and that's one of the issues is that as we get more, at some point we probably need to come to the district for our significant, and we'll try to get a grant if we can, but we probably need to replace all the radios that are becoming obsolete. And we'll see, another issue is we're doing a lot of cellular systems now, but now with have we had any problems on our Verizon? We got warnings from Verizon saying that.
We've got problems, and as a matter of fact, last week we met with Verizon here at the district. We've got a lot of problems dropping calls and so on.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
Everybody on the Verizon,
It's
all
a
of us,
disaster.
Yeah.
it's a wreck.
So they're working on the system. They've got a team in from Albuquerque here working on
From Mexico.
this area, but it's from the lower Rio Grande Valley all the way
Yeah,
to
it's a wreck.
California.
Yeah. So the negative thing on that, I haven't heard from Rick. I didn't get a chance to ask him before the board meeting, but of course telemetry is more like your text system instead of voice. It's digital.
So it should go through.
And it does multiple tries. In other words, it looks at it, but it can only try so much before we give up and then wait another hour and try again. So we haven't seen too much impairment, I'm hoping, on the telemetry.
Yeah, we haven't.
It makes me real nervous because we've switched, to save money, we switched to cellular telemetry. but it's all Verizon.
Well, normally that's always been the best.
Right.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, when, a month ago, 2 months
Yeah,
ago,
and
About 2 months.
it's the towers that Mexico put in that are interfering and.
they claim they use the same frequency or something, or they
Right.
won't budge or something like that.
So there's a similar problem with the frequency we're using in these boxes, so don't, I'm just telling you that we did all this stuff and we bought off, we can't buy the radios anymore, so we bought them off eBay that went in this project. I guess we found some, so not all of them are off eBay, but they're gonna stop manufacturing them, and we may start seeing interference on this frequency from Mexico too. So at that point, you'll see Omar present another grant at some point for us to replace all the radios. That is not a cheap, at 103 sites, that's gonna be it's gonna be a big project. So just let you know, probably not this year, but maybe next year.
And so, moving on, we are currently working on rebuilding Wasteway 2, and this is funded in part by the U.S. International Boundary Water Commission. The amount that we're providing is $245,000, total project cost is $500,000, and we should be completed with that next year.
Yeah, we started.
Yeah,
No,
we
we're
start-
waiting for after water season. Pete's
Okay.
working on getting,
Where's Wasteway?
Materials.
Is that the?
Near a hole in the wall.
Oh, that one over there, okay.
Yeah, this project goes back 4 years to, you guys were aware of this, this was the boundary initially was targeting replacements, and we had some difficulty with their construction, so they're paying us to do the repairs. I don't know if you wanna call them repairs, the completion, I guess.
Completion of the project.
Yeah, and so that they were very gracious in giving us the materials, and then we're doing the labor. It's a big job, Pete started on it, that's why we changed the purchasing policy, was because of this project. So we've spent a lot of time on this project, getting it approved, and the design drawings and specifications and everything. And it will be done by 2020, because we have no choice, right?
right,
So that's it. So we're leaving the bulkheads that are in the abutments that are in the levee, or we're not touching, we're just moving the gates out. Again, for sediment problems in the design, and rebuilding a check structure with radial gates. And that's a flood control site, so it's a completely different design than any of our irrigation stuff. It has to be able to handle much higher capacity of water during a flood. So,
Through the Bureau of Reclamation, we also received a grant in 2018 to do the design work for the Franklin Canal and Franklin Feeder Canal. In total, this was 6 miles. They provided $75,000, and we matched that evenly. And this should be completed next year, or early 2021. And you can see the 2 sections in red where the design work is being completed.
so you'll see a bunch of survey bills for that. The first phase is always surveyed.
and that's the only section of the Franklin feeder that we need the concrete line from Partidor to Socorro Road, and we'll be completely finished with concrete lining the Franklin feeder.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Oops, sorry.
We also request funding from Reclamation to concrete and some of the small laterals, and we'll talk about those in a bit. The first one is the Isla lateral. This is $75,000, which pretty much pays for most of the materials for the concrete lining. This area is 3,100 feet, and this is located on Horizon and Horizon Boulevard and North Loop. They're in a section there, right behind the shopping center that's there. Completion will be early 2020, so essentially this winter, this will be completed soon.
Right, and it'll be the first concrete line project that Pete will tackle this year, right after we shut off water, but it's from Horizon Boulevard to Tres Hermanos Farms. Okay. Right there.
So we do engineered projects, and we do just standard maintenance projects. So the ones that are smaller, this is consistent, we've been doing this for a long time. Engineering doesn't really get involved in these. There's no survey or design or anything. He does it just consistent with his standard, with what he's done over the previous years.
Okay.
And you can see that the area there.
So that's engineer Pete on those. I
Yeah,
guess.
and Pete's engineering.
and this is one of the bigger projects. Through the Bureau of Reclamation, we received $1 million grant to concrete line 7,190 feet of the riverside. Total project cost will be around $2 million. This will be completed by, actually now 2022, because working with Reclamation, we've been negotiating the contract. This is essentially the area between the Bustamante wastewater treatment plant and Partidor, and then 1,040 feet past Wasteway 1.
No, actually.
And then moving on to the Upper Valley, we received funding to complete the design work for 4.7 miles of the La Union East Canal. This, we received $75,000 and we were able to match it almost evenly. We should be done with this project in 2021, and you can see the map in the following slide.
So that's phase one of,
So in purple,
phase two, sorry.
in purple, you'll see phase one. We'll talk about it in a bit, but we received funding to actually concrete line that section already. This is a continuation of that, and the interesting thing about this project is that it'll cover the design work for the meandering Texas-New Mexico border, so we're able to eventually request funding to concrete line that section once the design work has been completed.
And this eventually, hopefully, Al's dream is to do another diversion point from the Rio Grande.
Yeah, so we talked to you guys about this about a year ago or something, so we're looking at
Right there.
engineering and concrete lining this section here, which is, the canal's pretty high, so we're not too worried about groundwater issues. The wasteway's pretty low, so we're worried here, but ultimately, it would be, this is all in New Mexico. We just have easements, not fee simple. But we're looking at a big pumping bay in this area here with some sort of sediment and trash removal system. But the cost estimate on that is that, and that's the ability, again, to address emergency conditions, like if, let's see, a dam would go down for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that we could somehow get water into the system.
Right.
Is this where we did that temporary?
Yeah, we did a temporary test there, which was lots of fun, wasn't it, Pete?
Is that same spot there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what the temporary test showed us is you just don't pump water.
Yeah, no, it's not, it's simple. Yeah.
We were able to pump the water, but there's so much trash and sand and everything else that we've got to have a system, an automated system to remove at least the trash, and then the sand we'll have to discuss. I think the expert on sand pumping just left. Oh, wait, Danny's back here. He is. So, he's going to be our consultant on how to pump sand. What do you have to replace your bearings every 3 weeks?
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So that's a complicated project. So those are 2 phases of it. There's really total is one that Chewy's been talking with Mr. Ballou about. This right over here, and then we get it right, I think right here, isn't it, right there?
Right, their water treatment plant.
Right now, it's an arsenic treatment plant for groundwater, but there's facilities, land facilities, they haven't built the engineering facilities to build a surface water treatment plant there. And so, you guys remember that back in the 1990s, I guess? The Sustainable Water Project?
Not really.
You remember our litigation with the city of El Paso?
Oh, I do remember that,
Okay, there
yeah.
you go. So that, the desal plant was a substitute for this plant?
Yeah, okay.
So as things progress, if we can get this all under control and make diversions from the river there, then it would make it possible to perfect that plant.
Why do you show a purple line over there on the left then? Why do you show another Upper Valley water treatment?
Oh, I'm sorry, I pointed in the wrong place, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure,
Yeah.
okay. All right, I thought maybe we were talking about 2 or something.
Since the majority of this canal is in New Mexico, I went to EPCWID and their board of directors approved submitting the application, and they helped sponsor it by giving us a letter of support.
Okay.
And so they're well aware of our intention, so.
Yeah, we may still be able to negotiate with Reclamation on this grant to where I'd like to move. So really the phase 2 was supposed to be engineering all the way to the plant.
Okay.
There's some issues with high water. In this one that we have to see feasibility, so anyways, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves, we got the money to do that. But right now, the reason we're running this all the way back to the heading is we've had a big sand problem here, one, and we have some breach issues right here, breaches. But also, to be able to use this as a delivery point for the lower valley for us, we have to pump water backwards through the canal and then go through the check and back down to the La Union West, which is, at least on paper, it looked feasible. So we'll find out when we get the survey done if we can actually do that. But running a canal backwards is,
Yeah.
they don't like, the canals don't like to be run backwards. It's not something, you can only do it if they're concrete line, you can't do it in an earthen, well, you can, but it's has to be a very flat canal to do it, and we have too much grade to have a flat canal, so it's gonna take these two-way check structures, which you guys have never seen before, where we can pressurize one way or the other way. So for example, a radial gate is not a two-way structure, it's only intended for water to flow through it one way, so we have to design these with sluice gates. And we normally design one-way gates, right, Pete? And we don't do two-way gates very often, except in flood
I
control.
don't think I ever have.
All the ones on the flood, on the river are two-way, but those are the only ones. So anyways, it's an interesting solution to a big problem. Sorry.
Also, this year we received money for the concrete line, another set of laterals. This is the Montoya Main and Montoya A. They're not fully lined, but the sections of it that are looking in the Upper Valley, right around, I guess, a heavily urbanized area. This was $75,000 from Reclamation, which pays for pretty much all of the materials, and then we contribute labor and equipment. The completion year will be 2021. And you can see the sections there.
So this is where we have real high water, right?
Yes. And this is a help me sleep at night project, you know, where once we concrete line, a lot of us will rest and, because of ditch breaks in. And then this section right here, we targeted it because that's where that little girl got hit by that vehicle,
Oh, yeah.
where the road is right next to our canal bank in Seidel. Hopefully solve a lot of problems. I've been working with the city on, once we concrete line, we can work with them on doing something with the west side bank.
You're gonna narrow it quite a bit.
We're gonna narrow it, and then we'll be able to utilize the bank, or the city's hoping to utilize it, like we did here in front of Walmart, as a walking path, jogging path.
With rails on it.
George is hoping for a jogging path.
I wish they'd do away with all this speed bumps.
Yeah. Yeah, they're horrible. And they slow traffic down, but the speed bumps are horrible.
Alignment companies must have sponsored it because everybody's car.
Yeah.
So I find I have them in front of my house, and they're good for recovering things that fall off trailers. Get all sorts of supplies out there.
And then also this year, we talked about it earlier, we received $75,000 to upgrade our wells, in particular the meters, 50 meters. And so this was an equipment purchase, and we were able to almost match it 50-50. Completion year is 2021. And these are the MAC 3000 that Pete purchased for 10 of those already, and he's testing them out. He can tell you more about how they've been working. If everything goes well, we should be able to purchase those or similar meters. And then moving on, we earlier showed you that the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation paid for design work for the Franklin Feeder and the Franklin Canal. What we got, we were able to get ahead of the game, and we secured funding from the Water Development Board to actually concrete line the Franklin Feeder. So in a couple of years, we should have completed this project, and all of the Franklin Feeder will be concrete lined. This will be 5,500 feet. We received $180,000. The total project cost is 1,113,360, and we should be done 2022 or early 2023. And then we showed you the map earlier, but we also received funding to concrete line 4,500 feet of the La Union East. This is starting from the heading up to where Wasteway 32 is.
That's phase one of it.
That's section purple. And that is it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain.
Thank you, Omar, appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Let me see, Shui, we're,
Okay, I can do the other two right quick.
Do that.
Take a break. I know you wanted to take a little break.
yeah, we need to take a break.
On item G, you know, we're going to, we extended our irrigation season, as you all will know, to October the 12th. That's when we're going to ask the Bureau to shut the gates down, and then we'll have water flowing down for another 4 or 5 days after that. On September 1, we went off allocation, and so to assure that everybody can get whatever water they need. Robert, I had sent him to the Mexico meeting today because there was some important issues going to be discussed. Since we moved our board meeting date, it conflicted with the Mexico meeting. So anyway, Robert, that's why Robert's not here today. I don't know if you all have any questions. We did extend, we also added a small tract irrigation with extending the season to the October 12th.
I think that's fine.
Okay. And then item H, you all asked me to, from time to time, to update our organizational chart, and I had made some changes. We didn't show Kathy, which I think her position under the water master is real important. She deals with the farmers and the dispatchers and so on. So we added her position there, water records dispatch supervisor. And then a little over a year ago, I changed Lisa Aguilar's title from HR to Chief Administrative Officer because we've given her some additional duties. IT, she handles safety, she oversees grant writing, and the custodian of the building. And then her title, she coordinates with managers, and makes sure communications are almost always met. And let's see, okay, I think that was all, right? You said that we...
Now, the IT, you said, who was that you had in there?
It's under Lisa. She
Oh,
handles the IT section, anything that has to do with the IT, with our computer system. She also responds to any emergency that could, when our servers go down or we have an electrical power surge or something, she'll respond. We had an issue with doors. She spent a weekend here as they repaired the door system for us, the locking system. And then she handles our safety. We have 3 safety officers that respond anytime one of our vehicles has a fender bender or has been involved in an accident of any sort. She'll respond to that and make sure that we properly document anything that occurs. Plus, we've had several vehicles this year for some reason going into our canal system. We've had, I think, close to 14?
Not like our, it's
Not our
not our
vehicles,
vehicle.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, not
the
the
public.
public, yeah.
The public going into our canal. Some have caused a little bit of damage. Lisa works with our insurance company to cover that, or the vehicle involved in the accident insurance. We also had,
new bars much closer to the canal system.
I guess so. We also had some border patrol damage to one of our wells and to
Oh, my.
one of our canals, so we,
And to their truck, imagine.
yes.
Only the ones you catch.
Right.
Right, that's true, on this organizational chart, you didn't, no big change other than,
Yeah, other than
Kathy.
changing Lisa's title to
Okay.
Chief Administrative Officer, and then adding Kathy on the Water Master.
Kathy was added over here. Okay.
And I think we do require board approval.
What you do, of the change in the organizational chart?
Yes.
Any questions, gentlemen? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the reorganization of the organizational chart.
And as you well know, under the Board of Directors, legal reports directly to the Board of Directors, the Chief Financial Officer,
General manager
and the General Manager,
and district
and District
engineer.
Engineer, correct.
So the prior one was identical to this with
Yes.
two additions?
With the two additions, two changes.
I move to accept the new
George moved to accept,
Organizational
Larry
chart.
seconds, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then I
Okay.
had a couple, well, you want to take a break before?
Well, mine do that real fast.
You can? Okay. Al had item
D&E?
D&E, yes.
So I'll go quickly, and if there's a lot of questions, we can take.
This is a reference to, this is something that we,
This is
because of
stat-
TCEQ,
Yeah,
right?
these are statutory requirements, so we have
To
to,
TCEQ?
every 5 years, we have to review our water conservation plan.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
so there's effectively, the only thing that got changed in the water conservation plan was the facts that changed in terms of the amount of water we use. And probably most significant is they want to see, area serves the same, nothing's really changed, all those documents stay the same. Practices and advices haven't changed. But we did fold into this, they want to see the conservation projects we're doing for the next 5 years, or proposing to do, really 10 years. So I took Omar's grants, if you just saw that part of that presentation folds in, that's an update. And then we took our 5-year plan perpetuates itself. Every year that we finish up part of the 5-year plan, we add another year to it with more, so it's always 5 years. I think we're in year 8 of the 5-year plan, right? Or something like that.
Yeah,
But,
that's good.
so I added that to it, so they want to see what we're proposing. None of it, it's all non-committal, in other words, these are aspirational. So it's statutory requirements, so that's one I need your approval on.
Okay.
And,
Then you have one for drought.
and then we have one for drought, which is a little more tricky. We hadn't had to do this before, didn't feel that it's applicable to us. The legislature went down and made it crystal clear that it was applicable to us.
Really?
Yeah. So
We've
that-
never filed this before.
We never filed this before.
Okay. This is our first time.
We didn't think, Jim and I had argued for years that the way the language of the statute wasn't applicable to us, and
Who told you it was?
the legislature.
They did, they went back and made sure.
And it's all tied into Texas Water Development Board and what they're trying to do with funding and so
Yeah,
on.
so this one's tricky because it wants to talk about allocation policies and all sorts of things that we've always done. I think one of the situations is that many districts during times of adequate water don't allocate from day one. We've always allocated, you guys know that. Towards the end of the year when demand's way down, we've made requests to go off allocation, and we've done that, as we said, starting this year. But, so I documented that, and let me go to that's, by the way, that's courtesy of Reclamation, that picture there. So, I stole that from somebody in your office's presentation. I figured it's a drought thing, we might as well show them what drought looks like to us, right? I'll put a footnote on it. So, we have public meetings, this is one of them right now. Okay, you guys know, everything that's required by statute, we've always been doing since probably the 1950s, since the first drought. So a lot of the language I put in here is say, hey, we've always done all this stuff. And then when it comes down to procedures, I just reference the operating agreement and some of the internal procedures. So it's so there's nothing here but our existing policy that's in place, and then rather than me try to explain how reclamation and the EPID allocate water, I just put the operating agreement in as an attachment, so. So with that, you know, I think the reason, you can see there's only 3 pages, so it's not very much. Most of it references to other documents, because, you know, this, obviously in our, with all the litigation going on, this document, I'll be called to answer for this document.
Yeah.
I'll be the one on the witness stand, so the best way to handle it is to not conflict with anything that we're doing in other written documents that are out there, so all I do is reference other documents.
That's good.
And so I can speak to it through the other documents, and we do all
That's
this.
excellent. No, that's excellent. We're good.
So it's
Okay.
very short. We don't know if they'll accept this, but.
We're in good shape. And it all has to do with the number of Californians moving into Texas. I think it's 15,000 and
A week or something.
a week
Yeah.
that we're gaining here in Texas.
They ruined that state, now they're coming over here.
So
Because
Texas-
their plan is to ruin it.
Texas Water Development Board is concerned about water.
Right.
Will we have enough water for the future and so
Right.
on?
Boy. All right, so let me see. We need approval of this, of the water conservation plan.
Yeah, I need a resolution approving the water conservation plan and the drought contingency plan.
All right, let's do them each, one at a time. Do I hear a motion for approval of the water conservation plan that we will submit to TCEQ?
So moved.
Larry made the motion, George seconded, all those in favor?